Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden, Will Southard, and Tommy Yu.
Welcome everybody back to the PPP presented by Legit Football. It is time for the flavor of the week. My name is Brian. Please subscribe and tell a friend. That's how we grow this Pigskin Party. Joining me as always, back from the main NFL episode, Big Willie Southard and Tommy Yu. How's it going, guys? How you feeling?
What's up, man? We're doing
no
good.
Energy. None.
I was just going to say, I just want to say, to top off, to bring this show in, Brian pulls, man. He gets amazing guests. We literally just had Ty and Jim on the main episode, and I don't want to put any spoilers, so Brian can have the pleasure of introducing our next guest, but he's pulling phenomenal guests, so I'm just here for the ride. People might think like, oh, there's 3 co-hosts for this show. That's like an equal. No, Brian does literally everything. I just show. I'm like, wait, we're having who on for this show? Yo, that's crazy. So I just want to say, you pull. This is great.
Secretly, Brian just pays off all of our guests to attend. It's a lot of money. I don't
Do
know how
you
much
mind? It doesn't come out of your pocket.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
That's
yeah,
fair.
So, exactly.
That's fair.
Yo, dude, I'm here for the ride. Brian Pulls, he's a legend in my book, so if there's, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
So yeah, coming off the main episode, if for some reason you did not listen, we had Jim Monis on, former director of player personnel for the Bills, as well as Ty Dunn from Go Long, but we have an even more amazing guest right now. Let's go ahead and bring her in, Maddy Hudak, who's a co-host on ESPN Radio NOLA and a reporter for the USA Today's The Saints Wire. Maddy, welcome to the PPP. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I am thinking that I need to get myself a hype man like you have in Tommy, because that was excellent. Yeah, it's confidence.
Yeah, we don't let him talk the rest of the show. He just pumps it up in the beginning, like the guy in the rap quartets that just kind of has the beer and just
he stores all of his energy in his man bun.
Yeah, that's right.
He stores all of his energy in his man bun up top. You lop
That's
that
true.
thing
That's
off,
true. That's where it resonates from.
He's basically a corpse.
So as you heard on the main episode, and I'm sure you can deduce if you've been listening to us, we are going to continue our weekly Team Deep Dive series, and we are going deep on the New Orleans Saints with Maddy. But, as always...
All right, Anthony. Calm down.
Anthony
Stop it. You can't have 8-second sound drops, Anthony.
Actually, I believe he found it. It's like 24 seconds, so he has to manually cut it, or else we're going to listen to
where did you find that? Because people have been trying to find versions of Who Dat without the Superdome in the background, and it's pretty much an unfruitful
Brian
endeavor.
paid a lot of money for that.
Before we go into our Saints Deep Dive, that is our Flavor of the Week topic. We, as always, you've been listening to a bunch of NFL talk. You're about to listen to some really deep, awesome information from Maddy on the Saints. But first, let's cleanse your palates. So our palate cleanser this week is going to be a little bit of a two-parter. We're going to start with, this was brought up by Tommy. So recently, obviously, movie theaters have had a little bit of a problem with getting people in the theaters, and these movies that were produced, filmed prior to the start of the pandemic didn't necessarily have an avenue. So certain companies decided, well, we have to do something with these films. We need to make money off them. Let's release them direct to streaming. And one of the companies that did that, Disney Plus, said, yeah, we'll do that, but we're going to charge you we're going to actually charge you, in addition to your monthly subscription, $30 if you want to watch movies like Mulan, Cruella, Black Widow. We're going to charge you $30 to give you access at the same time that goes in the theaters. So, Tommy, first of all, have you ever seen any of these movies? Do you have any intention of seeing these movies?
No. That's a very quick answer is no. But my wife loves Disney Plus. Why we have Disney Plus, I don't know. We've used it maybe once. She really wanted to watch Hannah Montana or something like that. So I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, you can watch it here. And then ever since then, I can promise you, I have never used it, but do we still pay for it? Sure. But this is just a long-winded way of saying, suddenly, when Disney was like, yo, Mulan's coming out, the whole live action, but here's $30. my wife was like, so you want to watch it? And I was like, so do you want my honest answer or the answer you want to hear? Because that's two different answers. And honestly, I understand because I guess the argument for it is like, oh, if you have a bunch of kids, going all the way movies, getting all separate movie tickets, getting them all popcorn, blah, 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 that's like $1 billion. Whereas, all right, $30, you're saying I can pause it whenever my kids need to do whatever, run to the bathroom,
for all the
whatever.
kids you have, Tommy?
Oh, yeah, for my cat, my cat gets crazy. People who are allergic,
Your
I have
cat
to buy
needs
like
to get
8 more.
a movie theater ticket.
Yeah, right? But no, so I understand the argument for it, but for me, who has watched like 8 movies their entire lives, I look at them like, oh, do I want to pay $30 to watch a movie I don't care about, or should I just go on Netflix and then turn on a movie I then won't care about and just be on my phone anyway? So I guess that's my argument. And I guess
did she actually pay the $30? Did you pay the $30?
Oh, no. We never watched it. We got really close with Cruella because she's like on Instagram and everyone's like, yo, this is actually kind of dope. I'm like, please fight it. Fight it for a little bit longer and we can do it. But then, it's kind of fun to see. But my one last hot take that I want to throw in there, because it shouldn't be a surprise to absolutely no one, so I'll be vilified. Yeah, I kind of don't like to go into the movies. For real, though. Like, I'm a people person. I love talking, as all of you guys know. But, like, the more you become a people person, the more you become aware you just don't like people in general. And, like, I don't trust to be in a room with, like, 100 people all watching the same film expecting I'll have a good time. Like, right now, I've become very aware how much people don't care about other people. So, like, every time I go into the movies, I felt like there was a little bit of, like, an inconvenience where I was like, dang, this would be so much better if this thing would not be happening. Like, maybe someone isn't talking, but they have their phone on max brightness and they're texting the whole time and I see it at the side of my eye, or someone sneezing a lot, or just something. This is just me being nitpicky. I just don't like the movie theaters, and it is a shame that it is struggling, I guess. But for me personally, I'm like, if I really liked movies, I'd be like, yeah, I'll pay $30 so I could just, like, not deal with people. But maybe that's just
Tommy, a people person who doesn't like people, that sounds like a very Philly thing. So I think
you hit the nail on the head, man. I like you, Brian. That's exactly how you have to describe Philly people. How are they? They think they're funny, and they kind of like getting along with you, but they all hate you. You're spot on, Bri.
So, Maddie, I want to go to you on this. Have you seen any of these movies, these Disney Plus movies? Did you pay the $30? What do you think of this idea in general?
I don't even have Disney Plus, so I just know.
Maddie's got Disney minus.
I think it's either outrageous or incredible, kind of depending on how you look at it. Like Tommy was saying, like, yeah, if you have a bunch of kids and all that, then it adds up. But at the same time, it's kind of like that psychological, like, one-off $30 thing that just makes it a little hard to swallow, especially, like, I understand that, like, everyone suffered during the pandemic, but Disney, I'm pretty sure, is in a much better position than, like, I am. And so,
I think
like,
they're gonna be okay.
To ask for essentially, like, double the price of a movie ticket to, like, watch something on their streaming platform while they hide a bunch of other stuff in a vault, I think it's just kind of indicative of, like, this entire streaming industry in general, and how I feel like it's moving towards this very slippery slope of, yeah, you can watch this movie on Disney Plus for $30. But if you want to watch this movie, now you have to go get a Peacock subscription. But then there's Paramount Plus. And before, you could just go on demand. And you could pay $7 and see whatever movie, or you could go to the movie theaters. And I'm kind of with Tommy, where I don't really like the movies either. But I'm not going to pretend like I'm a people person. I like peace and quiet, and I don't like when that's interrupted. But that's why I enjoy, like, matinees, which are $10. So to me, $30 to watch something on a small screen. And I think there's some movies that require that type of setting. Like, I saw The Revenant in theaters. I'd probably never see it again, but I absolutely would not watch that on my couch. It really required kind of that whole thing. I get the necessity of it, but, I mean, it just kind of, I don't know. It's not the best look for me for Disney to be charging that much money to watch the 100th regurgitation of this exact same movie, basically. That's where I kind of stand on it.
Will, you have multiple kids. Is this something you think would be worth it if you just don't feel like dragging them out to a movie theater?
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, my kids aren't gonna watch Black Widow, right? So, like, Raya was a thing, right? And it's was
Raya the $30? I think Raya was just available, right?
No, it was $30 when it came
was
out,
it?
too.
Okay. Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is it got really bad numbers until it became free. And then they had a crap ton of, like, streams, like, go figure, right? But it's one of those things where, like, Tommy's point about, oh, you got the popcorn and you got this and that, like, yeah. And that's the bean counter who came up with that. They did that math. But, like, to Maddie's point is, like, all right, if you're going to release it, just do it in theaters first. Again, $30 is such an obvious cash grab for something, and no. I mean, I have Disney Plus, and I'll tell you, like, the worst thing on Disney Plus is not movies. It's this show called Fancy Nancy. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this show, but it is a little ginger, curly-haired girl.
Will is just going to rogue. He's straight up going to rogue.
Who randomly speaks French for no reason every, like, 5 sentences. It's a little curly-haired ginger who speaks French, like, every 5 sentences.
How is this different than Madeline, the childhood book of the little
I don't know,
school child?
but that is the worst
Madeline,
thing. That is the worst thing on Disney Plus. But yeah, no,
Is it like Tourette's? Does she speak French just out of... Like,
no, she just, like, she's
Je ne sais quoi,
fancy.
and then just gets
Croissant.
No, she's fancy, so she'll be like having a sentence, and she'll be like, can I have the applesauce, s'il vous plaît? And it's like, that's French for if you please. And it's like,
so it's like Dora the Explorer, except for, like...
I hate you.
Yeah.
I hate
Pretentious
you.
people.
It's so awful.
I went to an Olive Garden, so now I watch... Oh my god, we're getting so many people who are going to be like, what are they saying?
Anyway, other than the French gingers, I wanted to see Black Widow, but, like, it's one of those things where, like, $30. It's like you go to the theater and you don't think about, like, a human doesn't think about, oh, well, by the time I get popcorn and by the time I do all this, it's 30. Because yeah, it is $30. But what you think about is, well, the ticket's only like 8, right? So that's only like 16. So it's like twice as expensive, right? You don't really think about, like, the popcorn and the other crap. So no, to me, if it's going to be on there, I'll just wait the time, as will so many other people.
Well, it's kind of like why they price things at $19.99, because you associate, like, mentally 99 as a sale and a reduced price thing. Like, there is a psychology behind pricing things out, and like you said, yeah, you absolutely end up spending more money than that, especially when you think of, like, parking and all of that, going to a movie theater. But there's two things for me. A, if I'm by myself, $30 is a lot for that when, I could just get a drink at the theater for a matinee and that's half the price. Or if you have 6 kids, maybe you don't want to have to make popcorn and deal with all of that on your own. Like, there is an experience to going to the movie theater, which to me, like, somewhat justifies this, like, heightened price. But I'm not getting this enhanced experience in my house. Are you sending me popcorn that's already made? If I still have to do all of these things, then, like, the convenience factor is there, but it's not there. But pretty much it's a reduced viewing experience, again, in my opinion, unless you have, like, a movie theater viewing room. And
I feel like you have a tiny television. That's probably true.
I mean, I don't have a tiny television, but like I said, there are some movies that, especially like Mulan live action and Black Widow, like, those seem to me like they would do well in theaters because of the surround sound component and everything like that. Just feel like you're selling a reduced version of a product for twice the price when you're, Disney Plus and you already have to be a Premier Plus person. It's just like plus. I read something earlier that it's not Premier with an E, it's Premier with an R, and that's an important distinction for, I do
feel like somebody would make a killing if they could make a subscription service that subbed you to all of the other ones and just put all the content in one UI, right? Because you think about
streaming
how many
aggregate.
there are.
I was going to say, isn't that what cable essentially was?
I was just, yeah.
That's essentially what cable was. Everyone's like, oh, I cut the cord. I'm so thrifty, but now I'm subscribed to Hulu, Netflix.
You have to remember all the passwords and the different subscriptions.
It's great. I want to throw it over to the Bride guy for sure, but I think Maddie brings up a great point is I can't get over the fact that I'm paying, like, how much does Disney Plus cost? Like $10 a month? I don't know how much it costs.
Let's just say
It's
$8 a month.
$99 for 3 years.
It's the principle of, I'm already subscribed to you, and I pay you monthly to get whatever you give me, but now you're saying, hey, this is something else we want to give you, but now it's hidden behind a paywall, and that's why I have to do a double take, being like, hold on, just to even get your service I'm paying, now I have to pay on top. I think it's almost like the principle where the old man in me is like, oh, you're not getting my money again. I don't care. I don't care if it's an extra $1. I'm giving you what I'm giving you. But Brian, what is your thoughts on this whole addition? I mean, it's relatively new. Like, we're living it, so it's kind of cool because we're living history. Maybe this will be the norm moving forward. But like, we're seeing it develop right in front of us, and kind of what Will said too. We saw Raya or something who did terribly out of the gate because this
something. Yeah, but Tommy has no idea what.
I don't know what Raya is, but then when it opened up, it apparently started to do a lot better. I bet merchandising went up because people are finally watching it. So, what are your kind of thoughts with this whole first stream, first run, $30 kind of thing on top of already having to pay to use their services to begin with?
Yeah, so I have a direct case study, and I love that Maddie brought up the difference in experience. So I have a 7-year-old son who we've been watching the Marvel movies with, and we actually just about finished with Civil War, and it just so happens that Black Widow takes place after the events of Civil War. And I think Civil War is one of the best movies in the MCU, but we decided, you know what, I want the movie theater experience for my son. We went to see Black Widow. I also couldn't quite stomach the $30. But at the end, he told me, he's like, Daddy, I like Black Widow a little bit more than Civil War. And I'm like, really? I'm surprised. I mean, it was good, but it was nothing. Yeah, it didn't blow me away. And he's like, I just like it better on the big screen. You know, I think if Civil War was on the big screen, I would have liked that better. So he just straight up, this is a 7-year-old, no filter, just saying that just going to the movie and having that experience of the big screen and the surround sound made him like Black Widow a little bit more than Civil War, which I think Civil War is just far superior of a movie. So you can't discount the convenience factor 100%. You definitely can't discount the experience. And I think that's why theaters will never completely go away, is because you cannot replicate that. You can have a home theater. You can set up you can get a popcorn machine. You can, have a 60-inch TV, but it's just not the same unless you own a movie theater and like your private movie theater, you just go and watch with your family. That maybe then. But yeah, so $30, I'm glad I didn't. I was considering it. I really want to see Black Widow. I always go see the MCU movies on the opening weekend. My son is getting into Marvel. Do I pay the $30? I'm so glad that I went to the theater instead.
Well, there you have it.
Now, there you have it. Good, we're done. We've solved the entire crisis. Disney stopped charging. The four of us have figured out your little plan will not work in the long run. So as an additional bonus question on this palate cleanser, I was asking, earlier today we didn't have a palate cleanser topic, so I messaged Maddie and I said, we do these pop culture segments, do you have anything in mind? She said, well, I like horror movies, so I said, you know what, we're going to add a question in there. So Maddie, tell us about your favorite horror movies, what got you into horror movies. Go ahead.
Well, what got me into horror movies was somewhat traumatizing.
Living in Philadelphia? Oh, no, go ahead.
No. My mom was watching Halloween on TV when I was 7 or 8 years old, and naturally I wanted to watch it with her, and she said no, so naturally that made me only want to watch it, and that was back, with basic cable, the simple days, so I just accidentally leaned on the remote to change the channel, realized that it was like, on MTV or whatever, and then I went in the back, turned it on myself, and yeah, she was definitely right that was not entirely age appropriate. But I've just always been into the horror genre, but I'm very picky with it. I'm not into supernatural, and that really, cuts out a large portion of it. I guess I would say more thriller than horror, but I don't know, I like, in a morbid way, imagining, would you be able to escape death in this scenario kind of thing.
See, I don't like horror at all. Because it's the shock value. It's like, all right, whatever. But when I saw Saw, the original Saw, which was a project movie.
It was like 17 Saws ago at this point.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I'm talking about the original. I was like, this is interesting, right? Like the way they did this whole thing, the setup, all the stuff, and it was kind of done out of necessity budget-wise. But this is an actual interesting movie. But I just think that in general, what horror goes for is just so lowbrow a lot of the time, and it's just kind of throwaway that it really doesn't do
just
anything
gory
for me.
And
yeah, and there was this era, and it was actually ironically at the same time that Saw kind of came out, and Saw kind of stood out from them, where we went into this just gore, hostile, just kind of gross horror that had absolutely no plot development. So that's why I would say, I guess, more of a thriller. My favorite movie is The Silence of the Lambs. Scream being a close second, because it's kind of a meta satirical look at horror, and I like it like for that reason. And I actually recently watched a really interesting horror movie that I don't think anyone really knows about. It's called Peeping Tom. It came out at the same time as Psycho, but it came out in the UK, and for some reason, people in the UK like did not take to this movie well at all. It actually ended up
the original Psycho, or the remake?
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
the one in 1960. And kind of that like voyeuristic view of Psycho. I mean, Peeping Tom is about like this like serial killer guy who is also a voyeur, so he records his murders, but it puts the audience in that perspective, and it was almost kind of this like look overall on like voyeurism, and like that's essentially what cinematography is, and that is what we're kind of asking for, and people didn't really like that mirror being turned around on themselves. But it's just ironic that it came out in the same year as Psycho, and in the US, you know, Psycho became a cult classic, and his name is Michael Powell. The film was actually never released until Martin Scorsese brought it up like 20 years later, saying that it was the basis for a ton of his films, and a lot of like Wes Craven and all of them all tie back to this movie as, you know, one of their inspirations. So it kind of like ended up being this push to get it released, and it got released like fairly recently. So I thought that was just a very interesting fun fact. But I like more of the psychological ones, but they're really hard to actually get right.
I mean, do you feel like Hannibal is horror though? Like that doesn't even to me feel like a horror movie. Like that's just a
money
movie.
grab.
I'd say like The Strangers to me was like the biggest like horror, I guess, movie that it's actually really the only movie that's ever really freaked me out. It's with Liv Tyler. It came out in 2008. It's very simple. It's, you know, a simple home invasion thriller type thing. But Liv Tyler being in there, and I think it was Scott Speedman across from her, they kind of elevated it via acting, but it was really like stripped back, and there wasn't any, you know, special effects, and nothing really like happened until the end, but kind of this like slow burn of dread. But if you get it right, it can be really great, but there's such a chance of it going wrong, and I understand why a lot of people don't like scary movies, and it's a process. I have to go through like 30 or something movie reviews before I find one that I can get behind. So it is definitely an arduous life being a fan.
You know what the
Tommy,
scariest
before we
thing
move on, have you ever seen any horror movie?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to knock some people's socks off. So I am in the very same vein as kind of everyone here. I kind of like the horror genre, but it's a very specific horror genre. Like, I know with Maddie, it's like the thriller. With Will, it makes you think like Saw. What a lot of people think is just like this gory thing, but I mean the storyline behind it and everything is just beautiful. And the reason why I think Saw sticks out, that is actually one of the movies I did see before because it was such a cult classic, was the budget was so low, so they didn't, like, what they were able to make with that budget was beautiful. But I think those are the type of horror movies, like the more smaller budget, cult classic like type of movies. Like, this is kind of a throwback, but or not. It's not a throwback, but it's not that old. But Blair Witch, that came out what, like 99 or something like that. Like, it's such low budget. It feels so personal in itself. Nothing crazy scary happens, but like it sets up an environment, and you're like, I feel like I'm legitimately watching a home video. Like, I know nowadays
There's
everything's
a visceral
so CGI.
feeling of dread watching movies
Exactly.
like that.
And it's like, right now, maybe it's the privilege speaking. I'm like, oh, like, I know, like, when in the middle of the night, when I hear a sound, that's not someone trying to break and kill me, but it's that thrill that everyone looks. That's why people like roller coasters, all that kind of stuff. So my way of just saying, I think horror movies almost are at a disadvantage when they have like a huge budget, because now they're like, oh my gosh, let's do twist on top of twist with, let's spend this much money on this one scene with gore, and let's do this pop-up. I feel like when they strip everything away and all you see is just a person with a camera and a fantastic idea, that's where the magic happens, personally. And this is coming from someone who isn't a good movie critic because I don't watch enough. But the one thing I did want to say is, similar to you, Maddie, I was scarred when I was little. This might blow you guys away because you guys are so progressive. I'm Asian. I am a first-generation Korean person. And the reason I want to bring this up is my parents watched the Japanese version of The Ring. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Ring in general is pretty creepy. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, go Asians, the Japanese version. No, I legitimately will tell you right now. You cannot pay me any amount of money, turn off all the lights, and be like, all right, yeah, you're just going to watch Ring on repeat, and then I'm going to throw you into the woods and make your way back. I'm going to be like, just kill me right now. I'm just going to get that TV and let it fall on me. Because when I was little, I remember I walked in, I was watching, and I watched enough where I was like, oh my God. And ever since then, I was like, that ain't scary. That ain't that bad. So it's almost kind of ruined the horror genre for me. But so yeah, you should be proud. That's like 3 movies I just named that I've seen, and it all happens to be horror movies.
I remember when
Actually-
they let me watch a movie when I was a kid. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say a lot of American movies are actually rip-offs of Japanese horror films. So
It's scary stuff. They're crazy over there.
I remember, I don't know what movie it was.
Crazy
It might have been
Asians.
Halloween that it was like this guy like gave him like some of his chocolate bar or something. I remember this from being a kid.
Candyman?
And he walks away. No, and he walks away and he was like cutting wood with an axe, and he like axes him in the back. I don't know if that was Halloween or what it was.
No, that was just
Halloween
a home
is
video
not
that
an
Brian
axe.
sent you.
Well, whatever. He gets axed. in
That
the
was
back.
just
And
you walking around in North
No,
Central
listen.
Florida and just witnessing the
Maybe.
craziness that goes
But
on.
I remember. I don't remember what movie it was. It was like he offered him a Snickers and he said no, and then he axes him in the back or some shit. And I remember thinking to myself like, he was trying to be so nice, and that guy killed him. And that like, I legitimately like. Just
Wait, so the
messed
guy
me up,
offered
dude.
the guy who offered the Snickers got axed, or the guy
Yeah, he
who
got
offered
axed,
the
yeah.
Snickers did the axing? Like
No,
you
no,
didn't
the guy-
take my Snickers, I'm gonna kill you.
No. Like the guy who it was. Whatever. I'm gonna figure. I'm gonna
Maybe,
figure out.
maybe
what
he's
movie
a
that
health
was.
food nut, and he didn't want to be handed a
You know what
candy
the
bar.
scariest movie I've ever seen, or the scariest thing on TV I've ever seen though, of in recent history is Taysom Hill attempting to be an actual quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, nice segue.
What a transition.
Perfect. So we have
like
no
that?
choice but to move
good
on
thing
right
Taysom
now.
Hill's #1 fan is on this podcast.
There we go. So let's go ahead and Will, I could not have set it up. Every now and then you'll get one right, Will. I'll give you credit for that one. So let's go ahead into our Saints deep dive. We're going to go ahead and start with
All right, that's enough. 2 seconds.
Anthony. Play it longer just to annoy Will. Maddie, we brought you on to talk about the Saints, but we want to, and we will get into Taysom Hill, but we want to start first on your thoughts about the 2020 season as a whole.
Woof. It was over before it started, and we just didn't know it, in my opinion. I think, as heartbreaking as it was in the end, it actually was kind of incredible when I thought back to like week 1 and not week 1, but week 2 against the Packers, where the Saints defense was kind of imploding. Drew had zero chemistry with the offense. It really seemed like the team was headed for a very bad ending, because everyone kind of knew this was Drew's last season, for better or worse, but then and then they lose Michael Thomas, who we ended up learning after the divisional round really had no business ever essentially getting back on the field this season with torn ligaments in his ankle, and then it makes you wonder, did him kind of rushing back to help through the stretch where Drew was out make it worse to where he was ineffective in the divisional round. But by that point, Drew had 11 rib fractures, a punctured lung. Traquan Smith got wrist surgery like 2 days later. Deontay Harris went out in the first quarter with a stinger. Taysom Hill and Latavius Murray were already injured. So by the end of the season, it happened to the 49ers in week 2. It just happened all at once. But it kind of slowly, the injury bug really got to the Saints. And I think they've just been kind of chasing the dream since 2018. And it's almost put this like sense of anxiety on the past 2 seasons that
Was that
I don't
Stephon
know.
Diggs year?
It just, it never really seemed like it was going to get there this year. And there's a lot of people that kind of argue, if Drew had thrown this pass, if Jared Cook had caught this ball, the Saints would have beat the Bucs. And that's probably correct. But in my opinion, I don't think they get to the Super Bowl. And if they do, then they lose. And I'd honestly rather not have it come down to that. The divisional round is ultimately a little easier to swallow than championship or Super Bowl, because we've already done the championship one. But yeah, I got to see Drew one time this season, and it was the 49ers game. So that was it.
Are you glad that he removed the birthmark? You think that was a good move?
Huh?
Drew Brees, the big thing on his face.
These
Did
are the
he remove
questions
it?
Will asks.
No, I thought
Did
he
he?
still has the thing on his face.
No, it's really tiny. He got rid of it. I'm pretty sure.
Are those sources credible, Will, or are you?
I
don't
don't
think
think
they
I've
are.
always seen Drew Brees with that like mark thing on his face.
Really?
I'll
thought
never
he-
forget
oh.
when Oprah tried to wipe it off of his face.
Oh my!
Did
Oh,
she
the
really?
cringe.
Like, I
Man.
did not know this is a birthmark. Come on.
Wow.
Like, what did you
All
think that was? First of all, that was... Oh, and what's cute is Ian Book has a identical birthmark. So in other words, the prophecy has been filled.
Well, I asked the question of Jim Manos when he was on here before, and I'll ask the same thing to you. Do you feel like the Saints? I mean, and I can imagine what you're going to say, but with Kamara and with Thomas, do you think that they're actually like set up to succeed in a post Drew Brees world? You know, I mean, so much of that was, you know, his chemistry with Thomas and enabling Kamara to do Kamara things. The team looked a lot different, you know. It obviously was going to, but I mean, what are your thoughts about like the future of the Saints after Brees?
Yeah, so when I kind of look at the last like decade, post Super Bowl era, 2010 through 2015, Drew was dragging this team kicking and screaming into a couple of playoffs, but with the 29th ranked defense and the historical worst defense several years, just years and years of the game largely being out of his hands. And then the last couple of years, the defense has started to get together. And to me, the turning point was 2017, which is when they drafted Kamara. And that's finally when they kind of got Ingram to come out of his shell. And they really started leaning back more into the run game. And so to me, there are enough things in place that have set up a framework for success when Drew leaves. I know a lot of people point, to the Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill stretches as they're just, being one loss in the column. And that's fine and dandy. I don't think that's very predictive whatsoever. But I think it does speak to the team's ability to step up when needed. And I think they all know what is going to be asked of them this season. And this season shouldn't come down, in my opinion, to whether whoever ends up winning the role is an elite quarterback within one season. It's an unreasonable expectation to me. So I think that while the loss of Drew will not really become as apparent until one of the turnover-heavy heir apparents ends up kind of taking over for him. And I think that he's one of those quarterbacks that people will appreciate more as time goes on. But
Appreciate the hell out of him now.
Yeah, but a lot of people have said he's held the team back for the last couple of years and that, they should have gotten rid of him a couple years ago. And, I mean, I'm too emotional about it to admittedly, kind of say that I'm for sure being rational about it. But to me, Drew can do whatever he wants until he retires. He's earned that right on this team. And I don't think he's held the team back. It's just Sean's always played to his quarterback strengths. Sure, he couldn't throw the deep ball, but Taysom could, Jameis could. He threw him in there basically to get the job done. And then Drew actually threw a couple of decent deep balls post-injury this season. It's just that Sean is very good at running offenses designed towards quarterback strengths. And with his arm strength declining, that's, just kind of how we saw the offense start to change. But it almost sets up, hopefully, this self-perpetuating thing. That's not to say I'm expecting to, necessarily go 13-4 now. I hate that it's
I got to do the math. 17. I know.
But, for people that are saying they're, going to be glad at 8 wins, that's a waste of an entire roster to me that we, did a lot of work to retain in this cap-strapped offseason.
And a lot of free agents coming up next year.
Yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to kind of ask to Maddy specifically, because there are a lot of emotions tied to it. The greatest player in your franchise just decided to retire, arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. And so my question is, a lot of people are now saying, should you have moved on earlier? And they're questioning that not because Drew Brees didn't have anything in the tank. It's more of coming from an Eagles fan and the way that Howie has managed our cap. We are pretty much in cap hell, and we were. But then I look at New Orleans and said, it's not that bad in Philly. It's a lot worse over there. We're okay. So this is a Philadelphia fan looking at you guys with no emotions attached. When I look at New Orleans, I see a team that already lost a lot of key players on that team. Like, I'm just going to name names like Trey Hendrickson, Emmanuel Sanders, Janoris Jenkins, Rankins, Jerica, Quan Alexander. And this is just the beginning, because what they have always been doing is you hear all these fans saying, oh, the cap is fake. Look what the Saints are this great. No, the cap is not fake. What they're doing is they're just kicking the can further down the road and just hoping to keep that championship window open. And I don't blame New Orleans whatsoever. You guys were literally this close every single season. So looking at that, seeing the fact that you have Drew Brees, that you can win any given Sunday, I don't blame New Orleans at all. So my question to you specifically now is, what is your trajectory or what your prediction looks like for the future? Not just this upcoming season, but their future, the next 3, 4, 5 years, because you guys are definitely going to feel the trickle effect of kicking that can down the road. It's no such thing as, oh, now Drew's gone, Winston or Taysom Hill can step up and we were good as... No, there's going to be, unfortunately, a lot of tough cuts that are going to happen soon. So being in that cap hell, as all these fans like to call it, what is your realistic trajectory of what it's going to look like? Because I feel like there has to be some type of backlash of kicking that can.
Well, I think saying kicking the can is really oversimplifying what Kai Harley has been able to do behind the scenes. He's really the cap guru that gets absolutely no credit for what he does. The Saints... To me, the Saints are the only ones doing it, and everyone's looking at them and saying, I don't understand how they're always able to get under the cap, and then no one's actually trying to attempt to do these things. Yes, they lost Trey Hendrickson, but the consensus was they weren't going to be able to retain him anyways after the sack season that he had. Emmanuel Sanders was largely brought in as a Super Bowl piece for Drew Brees in that last push, and it's one of those things that was non-essential. I'd actually say that Janoris Jenkins was the biggest loss. But Sheldon Rankins, that was another person we had kind of projected was going to go away. But the Saints are also very good at drafting and being aware of that. So, while they let Rankins and Hendrickson walk, everyone was surprised. I should have known better, but, they draft in the trenches. They take advantage of those contracts. And they're currently $11 million under the cap now. So they really... and Quan Alexander, they only had a 1-year deal with him, and he's not really signed with the team currently. I think the Saints also are aware that, the cap continues to go up, and it ends up pretty much being the case every year. Now, there were a couple years where they made very poor free agency decisions. I just think that they've gotten smarter about the way that they restructure things. They make a lot of voidable years. They know when to cut things off. They know what to put into roster bonuses versus incentives versus base salary. I just think that there's a lot more going on there than one might think, because the large consensus before this offseason was there was absolutely no way the Saints were going to get under the cap. They were going to be the first team that didn't do it, and then Roger Goodell was going to cut Marshawn Lattimore because he felt like it, because there's not really anything that explains what happens if you're not under the cap by that date. Everyone thought Marcus Williams was going to be gone. There were a lot of people that they ended up keeping. So I think, they did what they could. They are probably going to feel the effects this year, especially in that depth along the line on the defensive side of things. But they're also very good at finding talent at those specific positions. So I think they just are kind of strategic about who they let walk and who they don't let walk.
I mean, you talk about creative contracts. They gave Taysom Hill basically like a fake contract. So, but it works. It's legal. It's within the rules.
Here's the thing. If the Saints were doing something shady, Roger Goodell would not let any of this go on. I mean, they tried to get overly cutesy with the Jadeveon Clowney thing, where they were going to... There was some 3-person trade where it was such obvious cap manipulation, but that's my thing, is if it was shady, there's no way the Saints would be getting away with it, because So, I don't know. People keep saying they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, but they weren't the only team, that lost stars. I just think that some of those were really, really bad stars to lose.
One thing I wanted to add really quickly, I don't think it's necessarily cap magic. When a lot of casual fans saying, oh, this player restructured their contract and converted all this to a signing. What I'm saying is, or I'm not saying I know more than the average Joe, but when I look at a contract situation, I see people changing the language of their contract. I understand that saying kicking the can further down the road is overly simplifying it, but the Saints have also been one of the stronger proponents to be able to restructure players' contracts. But that's not magic. What that happens is there is a lot of dead money that just happens later. So what I'm saying is, of course, when you eventually cut them, that's clean, or that's what you would think. but that dead money comes later on, so it doesn't impact the current year now. So whenever I looked at the Saints, I thought it was overblown. People were like what you said, oh, they're going to be first team ever. Like Goodell's just going to cut, all these people just for the LOLs, just because they're trying to get back at them for blah, 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 blah. But then whatever
the thought of Goodell doing anything for LOLs is
I know. Like, oh, yeah, this is for the bounty gate. I was like, no, their Saints will be completely fine. But what they will do to manipulate the cap to be able to be under, because I am fully confident that, that's why you pay the people to manage those things. They will not easily, but they will be under. But once again, we're going to be having this conversation next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And I feel like from a Saints fan's perspective,
kind of fake?
No, but that's a great point that you're bringing up. Because right now,
the cap's also
going to
go way up next year with the new
Oh, no,
TV
I completely
deals.
agree.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to say is being an Eagles fan and seeing Howie Roseman do exactly what I've seen, maybe not as creative to give New Orleans credit on what they're able to do, but Howie Roseman has also done the same exact thing. And the Eagles have been on the list, and we're still doing fine and things like that. But eventually,
what we
things
say
aren't
you're
always
doing fine?
No, see, if you let me finish my statement, it might be a little bit better.
Proceed.
We didn't have a Drew Brees keeping our team afloat. We didn't have these type of talents to be like, okay, now we're fine. Eventually, it's going to catch up. So this is almost from a Philly fan who's seen it before. You guys might think, oh, we've always done it. It's always going to be fine. Now you guys don't have that stability. So that's why I'm so interested to kind of see what happens with the Saints. But at the same time, I definitely see from a fan point of view saying, we've done it every year and the cap's going to go up. I wish it was that black and white, but unfortunately, from what at least I've seen, it doesn't look that way. But it's really nice to at least kind of see that extrapolated as well.
Yeah, and that just reminded me before, because you had kind of asked, the Saints not having like a contingency plan past Drew Brees. They've tried. They wanted Patrick Mahomes, and Sean Payton was very high on Lamar Jackson. He's been looking for a quarterback for a while. They were 2 spots away from having Mahomes, and my God, I can't think about that for more than 15 seconds at a time. But it got to the point where Drew was in the room with him, and he looked at him and said, listen, if he's here, I'm taking him, and then we're going to see what happens from here on out. And to your point about the dead money, that is actually the important distinction that I want to make. I don't know how they've managed to do it, but that used to be what the issue was. We were just destroyed by dead money. But I don't know enough exactly about it to explain it. That is why, again, no one knows who Kai Harley is. They didn't even have a picture of him for an article. They had to ask the Saints to send him one. They literally, I think, keep this man in a bunker and
like a Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah, and I have a legal background, so I get that you really can manipulate contracts if you really know how to do it. I think they are a little also, have that bias of those years of Brandon Browner and Jarris Byrd and those really awful mega free agency deals. But what they've learned, and that's where I think this comes into play, is that we haven't seen those huge free agency signings anymore. Jeff Ireland came in kind of at that same time, and they really build the team through the draft, take advantage of those fifth-year options. That's why they'll trade back late into the second round for someone like Ramczyk, because they can exercise that fifth-year option on him. So being aware of all of those things at once and keeping those all in mind, that's why I always say the Saints will never trade out of the first round, because they know how valuable that ability to exercise a fifth option on a rookie deal is.
Well, we've been dancing around the subject, but let's talk about those heir apparents that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite, Jameis or Taysom, and why?
Yeah, well, I love chaos, so I am one of the very small supporters of the Taysom Hill fan club. And here's my thing. I have no, delusions that either of them, to me, neither of them is going to be great this season. I just think Saints fans have had very selective memory in where they used to laugh at facing the Buccaneers and Jameis Winston. And, it was, I'm not even going to bother watching this. It's Jameis Winston, whatever. And with seemingly nothing to go off of other than one throw in the divisional round. And, again, I had the displeasure, I guess, of witnessing his one half. And I know you cannot take any stock out of an in-game switch like that. But I was very carefully looking for how he read the middle of the field, because that was supposedly what the LASIK eye surgery was supposed to fix. And there were a lot of throws where there were several linebacker safeties crossing that plane that it was almost like he didn't see them. And I think both Taysom and Jameis, everyone wants to say Jason or Tamus. It's really hard at this point, their names. But I think both of them tried to emulate Drew Brees to a fault. Drew could throw with their 3 linebackers crossing the field. Jameis Winston, he cannot. And Taysom, he's not going to be an elite pocket passer. But the way that the NFL is moving towards, and I mean, hi, Tommy in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, who, had his first career win against the Saints. 49ers, I pretty much died on a hill that it was not going to be Mac Jones, and I, happened to say Trey Lance because of the situation with Jimmy G and the fact that having a developmental mobile quarterback for a year made sense. Sean has clearly wanted a mobile quarterback. It's why he really wanted Patrick Mahomes. It's why he really wanted Lamar Jackson. And it's why, in my opinion, he's tried to make fetch happen with Taysom for so long now. Jameis, to me, offers his ceiling, I suppose, is Drew Brees, but he's never going to reach that because I don't think that people really can reach that. I just think that the way the NFL is moving, it is a more mobile system. I don't know if Taysom can get there, but everyone that's pretty much written him off before training camp, I would really give them pause to do that because to me, I think Sean sees a lot of versatility in a mobile quarterback to where if it's one of those things that they're both not totally there. A lot of people say Jameis gets the edge. To me, Taysom gets the edge because he can introduce more with Alvin Kamara. I know that was a big criticism that he didn't use him that much, but I think it's too complex to really get done in 4 games. And there was a clip I shared actually recently of Kamara actually coming up with a way to play himself off of Taysom Hill based on this misdirection motion element. So I think there's a lot of creativity to be had with Taysom, whereas Jameis, it's going to be largely the same offense, in my opinion, just praying that they're mostly out routes and not things that are going to be turnover heavy.
We just had this conversation with Jim Manos, and one of the things that he said was, he's obviously very invested in the New Orleans, right? He said he thinks a little bit that Sean has a sense of pride and development
hubris
in what he's done with Taysom Hill, though, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of would lend him to get a little more credit than you would otherwise give somebody. And I will say that it is a very small sample size, and he was not ready. But those first few games, it looked kind of like a meme, right? You knew he wasn't going to throw. Kamara wasn't able to be Kamara. He wasn't able to connect with Michael Thomas. What could have been that could be the whole. It could be a lot of things.
How about that Taysom versus Kendall Hinton game? That was
I don't
Bizarro
care
NFL.
about that at all, literally at all. But here's the thing, Taysom didn't go in to show the game plan there wasn't we are going to put together his showcase for why he should be the next quarterback. It's we need to win 4 football games so when Drew comes back, we can go to the Super Bowl kind of thing. So actually, Michael Thomas and him connected just fine. He actually connected very well with our rookie tight end, Adam Trotman, who had 100% completion rate.
Everybody's high on that kid.
Yeah, I know, and there's really no reason to be, but my only argument is that, again, he has 100% success rate with Taysom Hill. And a lot of people point to that Sanders throw that kind of looked like a punt gone wrong. But what people don't look at is at the same time that happened, he was getting chopped at the legs and was totally going over when he threw that. I know that everyone says it's a meme, but he went into it being called a meme. And I also feel like people discount the psychological element of essentially being told that you're a joke. And then having to go in, know that this is A, your audition, but B, also if I screw this up, I screw this up for Drew, who I, idolize. They spent Thanksgiving together. I just think there was a lot of pressure going on there that really, the same scrutiny, in my opinion, was not applied to Teddy Bridgewater, who, to me, showed that he could be an effective game manager in the Saints system. But I would actually point to the second half of the Eagles game as the best showing of Taysom Hill, because that, to me, was, can you play from a deficit? Can you play through adversity? Can you make any type of convincing comeback? The throws might have not been pretty, but he was able to kind of lead that despite having the chips down. So that's kind of what I looked at as more important. The mechanics, yeah, they're a glaring issue, but he'll be the first one to tell you that his mechanics have been poor the last couple seasons, especially when you add in all of the skills he's learned for special teams, running back, all of these almost bad habits that when you try to be a quarterback.
He hasn't been taking quarterback snaps.
Yeah, but it's also, he's like mentioned the way that he's taught to block in special teams, he think has kind of given him bad habits in terms of running the ball as a quarterback. So I'm personally willing to give him a chance to see if the fundamentals are truly the building blocks of fun here, and if we can like actually get him at least kind of on a level playing field. But I think that pretty much up until last week, people were, saying anyone that said Taysom Hill had his shot was a complete joke. To me, Mickey Loomis doesn't come out for absolutely no reason and say, hey, by the way, this is still a competition. Because otherwise you're just giving Jameis Winston a complex at this point that he doesn't need to have if he's actually truly the starter.
What do you think, I don't know if he said this or not, but there was that viral, clip or whatever at the end of last year when Drew looked at the field and he's like, this is your team now, kind of deal. Do you think he was just being nice to Jameis? Or do you think there was a little more to that then?
I think we lip read a lot there. I don't think anyone knows what he said there, but, I've also seen Drew look like the girl said yes to prom when Taysom is on the field and doing these types of things, and he's spoken very, very, very highly of him. People don't really realize is, all of those off seasons, Taysom attached to Drew's hip. He would follow him around like literally a barnacle on his side, and has really taken in not just his, abilities, but his work ethic and his leadership. And there's also this kind of sneaky aspect of being the player that he is and being kind of that jack of all trades. He's in the huddle with Drew even when he's, QB2. He's actually out on the field. He's getting a sense of what it's like to see Brees lead that team in the huddle. He knows the offense well from a very visceral, internal, unique perspective of actually being all over the place and having that all down. So I don't know. I think that he's done so much for this team, and for people that say oh, I don't want him to be the quarterback because he's so good at everything else that he does. To me, if he wins the quarterback role, it means that he's a better quarterback than Jameis Winston. If that's the case, I'd rather have him in the most valuable position on the field than doing this experiment that everyone also, again, has selective memory about hating when it goes wrong.
If he really focuses and develops, his ceiling is Tim Tebow.
I've said his ceiling is, if we want to go totally delusional, to me his ceiling is 2015 Cam Newton. Realistically, it's more Ryan Tannehill. But they've figured out what to do with Ryan Tannehill in the sense that he's
got a decent ceiling now.
But in the sense that
Tim Tebow and Taysom Hill are switching.
Well, it's actually, the funny thing is that now Mr. Tight End Tim Tebow, Sean actually went to Tim Tebow several years ago and asked him if he would sign with the Saints as a tight end. And he said, no, I would like to be a quarterback still. So,
congratulations, you played yourself.
you played yourself.
And to me, that really stuck out because if Sean
should have found the Bible verse where it says you should play tight end.
If Sean didn't think that Taysom had a chance at being a quarterback at all, he would have been converted to tight end by now.
Well, let's go ahead and get predictions for you then, because obviously you are a believer of Taysom, at least with the quarterbacks that are currently on the roster. Where do you see this Saints team ending up? They've got the Super Bowl champions in their division, no more Drew Brees, Hall of Fame legend quarterback, but they still have a lot of talent and a very well-run organization and a great head coach. So records, where do you see them ending up? Do you think they have a chance at the playoffs in 2021?
Yeah, the Super Bowl champs who, again, I mentioned all of those injuries, and it really actually came down to the last couple of minutes, and then, we pummeled them during the regular season. Again, I think that this team knows how to step up, and I think that this is going to be the ultimate test. So to me, it's not so much of a question of whether Taysom or Jameis does well at quarterback. It's whether the team can step up and rise to the occasion here. But I'm going to be honest, Falcons to me, unclear. I get that Kyle Pitts is, a revolutionary tight end, but who was a revolutionary quarterback? Justin Fields. And it somewhat escapes me, but I'm very glad about the fact that he's not in the division. But Saints have had the Bucks card throughout the regular season. I think that Sean is the smartest brain in the division, and I think that gives us the edge. I really don't even know what's going on with the Panthers, to be honest. I actually haven't even thought about them a little bit. But I think that the Saints will obviously be kind of going back and forth with the Bucs, but looking at their schedule, some of these teams, I mean, the Packers is going to be a fun litmus test in week 1, but I don't see any reason why, especially with this whole like wild card expansion thing. If the Bears made it in last year, did they have an 8-8 record? The bar is really low for that last team.
If your bar is the Bears,
Washington won the East with 7-9, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to happen over here, but that's what I'm saying. Like, at least a wild card berth. But I don't know. I've seen people saying, like, oh, if we have, like, 8 wins this season, it'll be a success. To me, if they don't get 11 wins, then something has gone wrong. Because that's 6 losses and, right? Good Lord. This is going to be really hard.
11-6. I know. It gets me every time.
Because I'm trying to think, like, is 11-5, was that reasonable? But just looking at the schedule, sure, they could lose 6 games. They could lose them all within the division. But to me, I'd say 11-6 is like where I'd see it being, okay, well, we didn't screw this up.
Well, I mean, I think it as we all know, it's going to come down to the quarterback play, whether Taysom can step up, whether it's Jameis. That's what it's going to come down to. The coach is there. The rest of the talent is there. As so often in the NFL, the quarterback position is going to dictate just how far that team can go. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Maddie, thank you so much for coming on. Your real last name is Hudak. I saw that.
Truly a random gift from Slovakia.
Hey, but you were destined for Saints fandom, so thanks for coming on the Pigskin Party podcast. Love to have you on again.
Yeah.
Tommy, Will.
You know what's funny about that before we hang up, though? I
There's
read her name.
Inevitable interruption, Will. Continue.
I read her name on Twitter, and I just the first name, and then I read the bio, and it says it's pronounced Hudak. And I thought it meant that she was a Saints fan, but obviously also really loved Dak Prescott. That's what I thought it meant. I was like, that's kind of a weird mashup. Why would you like that guy? And then I read the lesson. I was like, oh, nope, that's not what it means. I'm an idiot.
Yes, you are. All right.
I was like, random Dak Prescott lover.
That's,
okay.
that is new. That is a new one. So,
Congrats, Will. You told her something she'd never heard before. That's a great way to end it. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Quick reminder, we are going to be running 2 fantasy football leagues, DFS. We'll do a weekly and a season long. If you're interested, reach out to us, pigskinpartypodcast@gmail.com. Or, of course, reach out on any of our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at officialpppod. Watch this on YouTube. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and continue to leave us 5-star reviews, regardless of what random things Will decides to say to our wonderful guests that come on. Make sure to sign up for Legit Football, legitfootball.com, for the top 5 NFL stories of the day. You'll find the link in the episode description. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week on the PPP.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.